Ladies and gentlemen, just like in other areas of business and daily life, the financial services sector accelerated the switch to digital technology during the pandemic. Our next discussion will focus on the current state of digital accessibility in banks across the continent and what still needs to be done. I'm pleased to introduce to you the moderator of this discussion, Nuru Mugambi, who is a public affairs director and sustainable finance lead at Kenyan Bankers Association. Nuru, over to you.
Hello, and welcome to the discussion. I am called Nuru, and I work with Kenya Bankers Association as a director. I'm happy to be here. We are learning to sign and want all bankers to learn to know a little sign. Now, we welcome the presenters. I should say this is speakers, but presenters is presenters. So let me introduce the team. Tamara Cook is the CEO of FSD Kenya. Welcome, Tamara. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. And I can't do everything, but I can at least do.
Yes, wonderful, wonderful. This is how you clap in KSL. Good job, good job. Okay, great. We can all learn a little bit, right? We can all learn a little sign. Fantastic. And thank you so much for being here, Tamara. Your audio is it's sounding like you're a bit far, so maybe you can adjust that. We also welcome Samuel Munana. He's the Executive Director of the Rwanda National Union of the Deaf. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm happy to be with you, and I'm happy to see everyone here. So to present about banking in general. Thank you so much.
Great. So it's good to see you. Thank you. Okay, great. And then we have Mr. Simon Munde. He's an executive director with the Federation of Disability Organizations in Malawi. Welcome.
So we're having difficulties getting Simon in. Okay. So maybe if you could move to the first questions and then we'll hopefully get him in.
Sure thing. So Tamara, I hope we can start with you. FSD, really the work that you do around financial inclusion is just so commendable. And FSD has, of course, supported the Kenya Bankers Association, where I work, on efforts around digital accessibility. Most recently, FSD supported the project where we partnered with Enable, the organizers of this conference. On the continent, I believe it is the first time in Africa that the banking industry has come together to really look at persons with disabilities from a policy perspective and chart the way forward towards enhancing digital accessibility. And of course, this was a project that brought together 7 banks in Kenya, and Enable conducted an assessment, and the recommendations that came out from it were adopted by the banks through the Kenya Bankers Association. So Tamara, we know that Kenya is a global leader in financial inclusion, and this has been accelerated by mobile banking services. Of course, we know mobile banking through the FinAccess report that FSD supports the central bank and the Bureau of Statistics on. Through the FinAccess report, we know that in Kenya, we have 83% financial inclusion, but only 34% of customers with disabilities use mobile banking. And a further 23% are using the mobile app. So maybe we can ask you the question. We know that with COVID, everyone is going digital. What can be done to make mobile banking more accessible for customers with disabilities? How can we increase the usage? And what activities have you seen from the KBA FSD Enable project that are really keen? What are those findings that you think are important? Thank you. Over to you, Tamara.
So I think the research that we did together on people with disabilities who do already access banking services was very interesting. You know, we saw that 92% of people with disabilities are comfortable going into the branch. 72% are using the ATM, but as you've said, only 34% are using that mobile banking app, and only 23% are using, 23% are using the app. What's interesting is when you look at how they rate the ease of use, 30, and I've got these numbers written down, 31% of people find mobile banking easy to use, and 34% use it. So I think there's something quite clearly connected between whether somebody finds it easy to use and whether they use it. This is not a surprise, right? And when I went back and reread the report and looked at some of the comments that were coming out, there were things like, I like to use, from a visually impaired person, I like to use mobile banking because it respects my privacy and it's easy to use. So that's in that category of people who maybe their bank's app is better, maybe their mobile banking is better, but it's about whether they love to use it and it meets their needs. This privacy thing I think is quite important, especially for people with disabilities. Sometimes they're asked to do things either with a helper or, you know, to have something read out loud where other people can hear, that's not appropriate. And so we really need to make sure that not only are we serving people with good products, the technology works on the mobile banking side, but that we're really thinking about these other issues like ease of use, privacy, and some of the other things. You know, one of the contexts I love, there was someone who's kind of trying to be polite, but he was talking about his mobile banking use, and he said, it's not friendly, it's not smooth, it's not that pleasing. These are not things as bankers you want to hear from your customers. And so I think we also just need to be curious about these results. You know, if 74% of people are using ATM, but only 34% of people with disabilities are using mobile banking, we need to ask why. Why is it that they're able to use this one and they're not able to use that one? How can the technological tools develop so that they can do that? Another thing that I think we found in the research was around updates, technological updates. You know, maybe someone is using the mobile banking app, it's working, they're using a screen reader, whatever it is, and then an update comes. And all of a sudden that solution that had been working for them no longer works for them. And so I think we need to be cognizant of people with disabilities, not just at the initial stages, but throughout the life cycle of a technological application. The final thing I want to say, and it's something we talked about in this very panel last year, is how important it is to involve people with disabilities in the design and user acceptance testing of these products. It's not just a research thing that we're going to do at the very end, right? But it's really about involving them at the beginning and throughout when there's changes, so that the customers are delighted. Customers with disabilities are absolutely delighted to use this. Now, this is for the customers with disabilities. We also know that there are a lot of people with disabilities who are not customers of banks. And that's because they don't find it easy to access that. And that's something else we could talk about perhaps later in the panel.
Thank you. Certainly the issue around ease of use, and including that is whenever there are updates, making sure that we're not leaving anyone behind who might already be customized or accustomed to certain features and the flow, the user journey. The panel before us talked a lot about capacity building and the need to build capacity. And also they talked a lot about culture, and I think you've spoken to that. And then I think finally also, I think we heard in the panel before this very important point that you're saying, nothing for us without us, right? So making sure we're bringing persons and clients with disabilities, whether or not it's permanent disabilities or temporary disabilities, just making sure that we're incorporating them from the design stage, not the testing stage. So thank you so much for those feedback. In the chat, I have posted the report that Mrs. Cook has referenced, just so we can all see that. Now, allow me to move from Kenya. We are moving to Samuel. Samuel, how are you in Rwanda? So
We are
as you,
good.
sorry?
We are good, thank you.
Oh, good, fine, good. Good. So Samuel, if you could tell us about your experience in Rwanda, maybe you could just share generally, maybe you've seen the report about what Tamara is talking about, the project FSD, KB and Enable did, really just working with the banks and helping the banks understand what areas they need to really focus on. Maybe you can give us a window into what is happening in Rwanda, the experience in terms of the use of mobile banking among citizens with disabilities, including our brothers and sisters like yourself with a hearing impairment. So somebody with a lived experience as you have, do you use mobile banking, and what could banks in Rwanda do to better support clients like yourself? Over to you, Samuel.
Thank you so much once again. I think it's really a good question. So as you said it, I'm somewhere Munana, and I would like to tell my experience in general. The way I see it here in Rwanda, the banks are really improving and updating, and their working is really good and it's very fast. There is a rapid development here in Rwanda concerned with banks.
Mobile app.
So they have mobile apps.
And mobile banking.
With mobile banking, they have a lot of things that they are using so that
Banking connected.
so banks connect on different networks, for example, MTN and Airtel and Tigo, and all of them connect with the banks with the different services. So if at all someone needs to pay, there is no need of going at the bank. You can easily pay or transfer money.
You can transfer money from the bank.
Let it be money from mobile to the bank account, or from bank account to any network. Let it be Airtel or mobile money. So it is really good and it is helping us here in Rwanda. As I myself, I also do it. So this all reduces the line at the bank by where people go there to look for the services face to face.
So if I get my phone.
So if I have my phone, it is very easy to use all services with the bank. As I personally, as a deaf person, it may even be a barrier as in terms of communication if at all to go at the bank. So mobile services are very good to us, specifically people with disability, with deafness. So many of deaf people has smartphones. The only problem that they are facing maybe I have to say how they use it. It is very good to them also that they use all the services. But sometimes a challenge is the deaf may not the deaf and the all tools that banks give or that they are having. Many number of deaf people here in Rwanda. There are very, very few who can be informed or who has that capacity of how to use that mobile banking services. Some of them, they also have smartphones, but they don't know whether mobile banking do exist. So what I would encourage the banks, they can try to encourage or mobilize the deaf youth or deaf people to ask for them to be able to use those services. For example, they can use videos, how to access mobile services. And within that video, they can put an interpreter, sign language interpreter, so that a deaf can understand how to use all those services. Because we normally see the messages, but most of them may not understand at the same level of how they can use the quite good when they use videos with sign language than using just messages for them to understand and to be aware of those services. And in another thing, it is good also to employ people with deafness. So that if someone who is having that, who is a person with disability can also go and find that person to communicate with that and to explain more. Then people's mindset in society or in environment that all people with disability are also able, because as you know that it is very hard to change people's mindset, but there who are able, not just hiring them, but they are there who are able and they can do such a job. And I would like to conclude here by saying that I appreciate everything that banks do, and I would appeal them to do. Thank you. For any more questions, you can ask me. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Very, very important information. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm trying. I know a little bit. Okay, and that's another interesting thing because so I speak KSL, or I'm learning, I should say, to speak KSL. So I wonder, is the Rwanda sign language very different from Kenyan sign language? Samuel?
Yes, it is somehow different. different,
but
Okay.
but
to understand
I can try to understand it.
Okay. I see some similar words, so that's nice. So thank you so much. Thank you. So I see Mr. Simon. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Welcome, welcome. All the way we've crossed all the way. We have been in Kenya. We went to Rwanda. Now we're in Malawi. We have here with us Mr. Simon Munde. He's the executive director of the Federation of Disability Organizations. Karibu sana, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be here.
Fantastic. So please, Simon, could you share with us the Malawi experience in terms of access to financial services? We've heard from Samuel about what's happening in Rwanda, how they've seen a rapid increase in mobile app penetration and smartphone penetration, and that's encouraging clients with disabilities to start transacting more independently. And he shared with us some of his thoughts about the need around culture, helping us reframe how we think and look and really engage with our brothers and sisters with disabilities, including from an employee perspective. We also heard in the panel before about culture issues. So Simon, maybe you could give us a window into Malawi. What is the lived experience?
Yeah, basically what I would say is that the Malawian situation may not be as different from other African countries in terms of access to financial services, be it technologies. However, maybe we may still be lagging behind in the sense that our banking sector, much as it has opened up to persons with disabilities, more especially in terms of physical accessibility, would say we're making progress in that area of the premise, access to the premises. But in terms of technologies, talk of issues of ATMs, there were some efforts to bring in aspects of speech software for the accessibility of persons with visual impairment. However, we haven't seen the upscaling of the same or popularizing of the same with other branches. It's more available in the urban sector, and it's not even very much visible as of now. And that was being done much with the National Bank of Malawi, but the other banks, they haven't done that as much as they were supposed to do. We've seen the growth of issues of mobile money, and that is working for the good of persons with disabilities. I would say as FEDOMA, we've implemented some inclusive microfinance kind of interventions, including even issues of village saving and loan groups, because we felt that would be a starting point in terms of access to issues of economic empowerment initiatives. And at the same time, the fact that most of such kind of groups could not easily access banking services, the most ready kind of a service would be issues of mobile money. And most of our groups that we established or have been using mobile money as a way of maybe keeping the money safe. And at the same time, even other groups have even gone further in the point of share outs to be using them. The good thing about it is that most of these services, we have two, that's Airtel Money and TNM Mpamba. TNM is Telecom Networks Malawi, Mpamba. So these two mobile money service providers have also got some connection to the banking services. So it's even been possible for them, the groups, to transact from their mobile money wallets to their bank accounts. And that would be one of the areas that I would say that has been a very helpful kind of an area. In addition to that, basically the opening up of the banking sector has been a problem, because I think there also hasn't been products specifically designed to suit the needs of persons with disabilities. I think this is one other area that has been a problem, because you would expect such kind of services that persons with disabilities should be able to access, such that even issues of sign language interpretation, as for Doma, we have other employees with who are deaf, and for them to maybe access the services without barriers or communication barriers, it hasn't been an easy thing for them. So these are some of the challenges that, in a nutshell, I would say have been there as a sector, and these are the experiences that we've had. Thank you.
Thank you. Very interesting. And Mr. Simon, you've really just given us a look into what's happening in Malawi. It's really encouraging to hear that banks are beginning to open up to clients with disabilities, and they're making some progress. I think the point that you're raising about technology, really, I know the next panel is talking about technology, but really that is that enabler, isn't it? And the point that you're raising about ATMs, we're seeing the same trend in Rwanda and in Kenya, the fact that the ATMs are a key point of interaction for clients with disabilities. So the need for speech software is important, and also really just the overall ATM environment, just making sure it's accessible, including how high up the keypads are. You also talked and brought in a new dimension in this issue of intermediation and access to money and capital. And what we're hearing from Malawi is that our clients are doing it for themselves. They're coming together, they're forming their chamas, as we call them in Kenya, and forming their VSLAs to pull together their capital and support each other's businesses. So indeed, we need to look at this as a segment. In fact, I remember we had a very interesting engagement with KCB, where we talked about we need to look at clients with disabilities as a market segment. That means, to your point, Mr. Simon, designing products specifically to this segment, and also looking at the service delivery and the user experience, to the point that you raised. Some wonderful, wonderful feedback. I would want to say that your point about technology and speech software, and how you said that it's only really in the urban areas, really echoes what Ms. Britu in the chat raised the question, how has the technology reached some of us in the rural areas? So to your point, we really need to look at equity in some of these innovations and services that we are doing, to make sure, regardless where brothers and sisters are, they're able to be assisted. So allow me to turn to the chat, because there are quite a number of questions and we just have about 10 minutes left. And we'd like to get to as many of your questions as possible. I know we were asked to use the Q&A function, so allow me to go there first, if that's okay. Mr. Simon, there's a question for you. How safe does the use of financial devices, okay, so I think the question here for you, Mr. Simon, is how safe are these devices and mobile banking? Maybe you could just speak to that in general.
Basically, they are safe. They're safe in the sense that I think just as you keep any money that you have, But in this particular case, it's safe in the sense that you would be able to, as a group, they would have a PIN that they use normally when they are actually transacting. So technologically, I think there are those kind of measures already that have been put in place to make sure that this is safe. And it depends on who the treasurer of the group is, and it depends on the constitution of that particular group as to who keeps the money and who has access to the PIN for that particular mobile money, and that will make it as safe. So it's all about the confidentiality that is maintained within the group to make sure that the security of the money is not compromised in any way.
What about from a mobile banking perspective? How do you, in Malawi, you mentioned Airtel Money and the telecom network. How secure do you feel transacting?
Yeah, basically, I think it's the same idea of using the security PIN and who has access to that particular security PIN as you are actually transacting, because these are the monies that are for the group. So that's basically what has to be maintained. It's also possible within in a situation that it's an individual with a disability, let's say with vision impairment like myself, that I am using that particular service, the mobile money one. It's up to me to be as confidential as possible, making sure that the security PIN that I use is not something that is there for public consumption. So issues of the security PIN being for myself or maybe just one other person. So independence, autonomy has to be observed all the time to make sure that somebody does not actually tamper with the security or the resources that I have.
Thank you. We see a number of questions here, Tamara, to you about the report. Jackie is asking what informs the statistics that you've mentioned. And then Claiborne is asking, by having assistive technology available, how does that assist the deaf? So could you speak to the statistics and why some of these initiatives, like the KBA project, why these initiatives are helpful?
Yes, no, thanks, Nuru. So the statistics that Nuru and I have both been quoting from are from a report that we did together with Enable. That was a survey of clients with disabilities in banks, and the banks identified those clients based on their knowledge. It's a good question. I'm not sure that any account opening forms actually ask, do you have a disability? And that's something I think that could be part of the roadmap that the banks are currently implementing so that they have that data that they need and they can target those with disabilities to meet their needs. There was also a question around the FinAccess report. I'm delighted to say and embarrassed to say that FinAccess did not collect data on people with disabilities in the past, but the survey that's just been completed and will be launched before the end of the year did ask that very important question about people with disabilities. And as we've heard all day, people with disabilities, we use that as a term in this conference, but there are many different kinds of disabilities. And that survey even gives people the ability to say more than one disability. And what we'll be able to do is triangulate that data with information about use of financial services, financial health, challenges with using financial services, whether they've experienced fraud or things like that. And I'm so excited to dig into that data because this research that we did together with Kenya Bankers Association was about clients with disabilities, clients. And so this data will help us figure out who else out there needs this work, needs to benefit from this conversation, and so that we can bring them into the financial sector and they can really benefit from value-adding financial solutions in their lives. On the accessibility technologies, yes, we need those. Banks are thinking about them. They're thinking about adding them to their roadmaps to implement. And I think we also heard from the previous panel about players like Safaricom who have already done quite a bit in using some of these assistive technologies. Back to you, Nuru.
Thank you so much. I'm looking at the questions. I'm seeing some that were being addressed to the other panel. So I'm trying to see which other questions are there.
Nuru,
Please.
I saw one on face masks. I thought that was really interesting. It wasn't in the Q&A, it was more in the chat. And I do think that's something I hadn't thought of. You know, COVID-19 has come with so many different challenges, and COVID-19 has exacerbated this. And if you're used to reading lips and all of a sudden everybody's got face masks. And so how can we take care of people's safety with considering COVID-19, but also be attentive to people's needs? I think that was a good one. And I also just want to say, I think it's great the government of Kenya is really paying attention to people with disabilities. The Central Bank of Kenya has really endorsed this initiative, and the Ministry of ICT as well.
Thank you. Yeah, the face mask issue is one that is an important one. Thankfully, depending on the setup of the bank, the tellers are behind the glass, and so some of them don't wear a face mask. But indeed, this need for masks that are clear, I think it's one of the things that we need to look at. We've seen the point about bank forms. Indeed, currently they are not in Kenya. I'm not sure it's Simon in Malawi or Samuel in Rwanda. If your bank forms, when you're applying for a bank product or signing up, Simon, does the form ask you whether or not you're a client with a disability? Do your bank forms do that in Malawi?
Not as of now. I know that working with one of the microfinance institutions, they adopted it so that whenever somebody wants a particular product, they're filling a form, they are supposed to indicate whether they have a disability or not, and what type of a disability for purposes of disability inclusive service delivery. But with the mainstream banking sector as of now, I think we haven't seen it.
Okay, so it's certainly something that we all need to think about, because that point of starting the relationship, regardless of if it's a bank or microfinance service provider, at that point of starting the relationship, the data will help because we found that in the Kenya project, we found that the banks in the projects, most of them did not know how many clients could not hear, how many clients could not see, how many clients have a physical disability. And from a permanent disability, that's fine. We need to start capturing that. The tricky part is the temporary disabilities, depending on health and things like this, if you've had a stroke and things like this. So the system aspect, I think as much as technology has taken us very far, the system aspect definitely is one to look at. I think we are about to wrap up. I think I encourage everyone to have a look at the report we shared on Kenya. As Tamara mentioned, the banks in Kenya have embarked on working on a roadmap. 33 banks have committed to specific actions within their banks to enhance accessibility. And then we as KBA and FSD, we're very excited. We're going to be developing a mobile app and website where bank employees can search vocabulary. There'll be about 100 words around that are in KSL, in the Kenya Sign Language. So bank employees can self-teach themselves how to say banking, how to say welcome, just basic language that employees can self-teach just to be a little bit more sensitive. And then we also have a database of service providers. We found in Kenya, there's a need to develop a database of service providers. So you can start enhancing the quality of trainers, etiquette trainers, start harmonizing how you sign, because there are different signs. People use different signs, and Joe can attest to this. So some will say S is like this, some will say S is like this. So how do you harmonize? So within the banking environment, when you sign S or S, people know exactly what you're talking about. So these are the things that we're trying to do, and hopefully we'll be able to share back in this forum all these activities. Now I'd like to ask all the speakers I'm seeing Eric saying the bank can normally give out the form to fill out. So how do you assist the deaf to fill out the form? I don't know, Tamara, do you want to answer that? And also Simon from the Malawi, maybe starting with Simon. What is the experience for customers in the banking hall in Malawi?
Yeah,
when it comes to filling forms? Yeah.
The question is like, how do you help the deaf to fill form? I would expect maybe it was, how do you help those with visual impairment to fill the form? The fact that it's in ink, and those with visual impairment have a print disability. Yeah, it's in such kind of a situation, I think much of the reliance has been on the personal assistants. That if I'm going into a banking hall with maybe my son, or it would be my friend, that's the person that would actually help me fill the form. I'm expecting that those who have hearing impairment, maybe filling the form may not be much of a challenge, but the challenge would come in where now they have a question. How do they ask maybe a commissioner? How do they ask maybe a cashier out there who is there to support or to help clients filling the form? How are they going to communicate? That's where now the problem comes, because there are no sign language interpreters or sign language users within the whole, and that becomes a serious problem. And a person with a hearing impairment may even end up feeling things wrongly. That's where the problem lies. So one thing that would have been very important, the same kind of a form maybe should also be available, more especially for those with visual impairment, should be available maybe in Braille. The filling can be done by somebody else, but this particular person with a visual impairment should be able to read the information on their own without a problem. And within the banking hall, let's make sure that at least some basic signs, as you put it, the bankers should have that kind of knowledge, that kind of a skill. Sure.
Thank you so much, sir. We're really looking forward. We've actually a sign language challenge going on within the industry. And so I'm self-taught and my colleagues have been trained. So we're trying to compete to see who becomes fluent first. Tamara, there's a question here from Francis Okelo Oloya. He's asking, he's from Uganda, and he's saying that banknotes, the currency, it's hard to distinguish for a person with visual impairment. How can this be improved? I don't know what your thought is and recommendation that you would share.
Yeah, I mean, that's a macro problem, isn't it? And in fact, in Kenya's new notes do have ability to be able to tell them apart for people who have visual impairment. And so I do think that that's something that needs to be addressed at the government level. Different sizes can be used, bumps can be used, seals can be used. There's all kinds of things that could be done. But in the meantime, I think it's really incumbent on bankers especially to be able to help those who cannot see the notes, make sure they're not being cheated, so that they can really transact. The other option, of course, is by using digital tools to transact. The notes themselves become a little less important.
Thank you so much. I see a question from IT on behalf of Dupu, Uganda. Employees think that employing PWDs is expensive. How do we overcome that? Samuel, I don't know, is Samuel still with us?
I think not employing people with disabilities is expensive.
Samuel's having problems with the weather and the internet.
Okay, no worries. Yeah, so Tamara, you said yes, it is true, right? Do you want to expand on that?
No, what I'm saying is especially if banks are not employing people with disabilities, I actually think it'll be more expensive for them because they won't have people there who understand those with disabilities and are able to cater their services. I think that having assistance and those things are so minimal in the grand scheme of things. When you think about the ability to serve all of your customers better, that is a very, very small price to pay.
Indeed. Okay, great. So we need to start wrapping up. Allow me to ask Simon, could you share with us, we've really talked about, and the themes that have come out of this discussion is the equalizing effect of technology. So technology, I call it people have heard me say this. I know Tamara is like, oh my God, Nuru with your Kairos and your Kairos, but I call it the COVID Kairos, a window of opportunity, right?
Yeah.
Right now, everybody is switching to digital. The fourth industrial revolution is accelerating this pace, but COVID has now put more fire on that transition to fully digital business and infrastructure. So definitely, we've heard from Tamara, we've heard from Samuel earlier and Simon about technology. We see trends in Malawi and Rwanda, how the MNOs, MTN, Airtel, the telecom provider, and Tigo are all advancing mobile banking propositions with a touch on digital accessibility for persons with disabilities. So we're seeing that potential of collaboration between the banking industry and the MNO sector, because I believe the MNO sector is so far ahead when it comes to ensuring accessibility. We heard earlier from Mr. Paul Kasimu from Safaricom about their Zuri chatbot. We know there are banks like UBA that offer fully integrated digital chatbots. So I'll ask our speakers to each give us a final thought in terms of what would your call to action be to the banking industry? What would you say, and what would you like the industry to really focus on? And Simon, allow us to start with you, because I'm sure this is on the top of your fingertips as we wrap up. Thank you.
Yeah, basically, what would expect is that the financial service sector should take persons with disabilities as a potential market, a very good market. And the most important thing is the involvement of persons with disabilities themselves as they are designing, as they are executing. Hence the importance of them even recruiting persons with disabilities. In disability mainstreaming, we always promote the aspect of maybe as they are embracing disability mainstreaming, they should even set up a sort of a structure within being a disability mainstreaming committee. In other institutions, they would actually combine gender and disability mainstreaming. And within that particular committee, let's make sure that they have a person with a disability who is an employee to support the mainstreaming agenda, which means as they're making decisions, disability will not be left behind. Sometimes we've taken persons with disabilities just to be in those kind of low-ranked positions. It's even possible as we're making decisions of setting up boards for those particular banks to at least have a person with a disability within their boards, so that the decisions that are being made up there should also take into consideration issues of disability. Always to engage persons with disabilities as they're making decisions, so that even the products that are coming out should be products that actually take into consideration issues of disability. I've even heard some of the banks actually making decisions to remove the speech softwares from the ATMs just because they are saying that others have said the ATMs are making too much noise. You cannot be talking of too much noise whilst it is actually an aspect of accessibility to a particular segment of the population. So these things should not, and the banks should not react based on the voices from the majority. They make decisions based on the voices from those people that also matter within the society. Sure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You've given us a roadmap for all countries. That's so wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Tamara, final thoughts.
I'd really just like to second everything Simon said. I couldn't have said it better, and I think especially because I am not a person with disabilities. And so I guess my challenge to the banking and financial sector would be to listen, to have a posture of learning and curiosity, and hear, a fantastic advice from people like Simon, so that we can really take it in and move from a posture of learning to a posture of action. Thanks.
Thank you so much. In fact, we heard from Miss, I don't want to spoil her name, but Dintino earlier, and she said how she was a bank employee and now she's a consumer of banking services, and she's experiencing it through the shoes of a person with disabilities. And we forget about that any one of us right now could be a person with disability. I have lupus. I've talked about this before, and it's sometimes my hands don't work. Sometimes I can't even remove my clothes. So sometimes I do experience temporary disability. So we in the banking industry should not assume that we will live 200 years and we will never be old. We will never need a walker. We'll never need a lift or assistance getting into a branch. We in the banking industry actually need to be more sensitive to this issue, because I'm sure every single one of us, if it's not ourselves, know somebody or is related to somebody with a disability. So really, we've received such wonderful insight. We apologize that Samuel wasn't able to share his final thoughts, but we really thank you, Simon, for giving us a window into Malawi. We look forward to visiting you in Malawi, and thank you, Tamara, as well, for your wonderful, wonderful insights. Allow me to now pass it back to Bwana MC. Thank you.